Hey everybody, welcome. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to keep the air conditioner on today. It's hot in here, and I'm sweating like a pig. So, but I think I have the level of the AC underneath the noise gate at least. So when I'm not speaking, it's not just going to be humming away in your ears. So anyway, thanks for joining me here at this this Saturday Bro Down camera Q&A. Let me first talk about what I am shooting on. A buddy of mine does this when he does live streams, and so because everybody's always curious, what do you have going? So this is the red Komodo-X. It is the Canon 50mm RF 1.2, and so yes, it's a 50mm on a crop sensor, which means the camera is actually about 8-9 feet away from me right here. I have the space in this room to be able to do that. Then the mic, which is right here, is the Schoeps Schoeps CMC141. So it's a little tiny CMC1 capsule, CMC1 preamp with the supercardioid capsule on it. I've got the Rodecaster Pro 2 going right there, and then that is I'm just using the Procaster for a preamp and for effects, and I'm feeding the audio directly into the Komodo-X, and then the Komodo-X into an Atomos monitor, an Atomos Shogun monitor, so I can convert the SDI to HDMI, and then through the Camlink 4K into the system. So I haven't been able to stream in 4K, I think, ever. Hang on, I think I can maximize my screen here. There we go, that's better. I haven't been able to stream in 4K, even though I'm getting 4K to the computer, and I'm certainly getting more than 4K on the capture, and it's downscaling. So it might just be my junk internet connection in this area. So I pay for the highest internet speed, and emblazoned on the highest internet speed with all these providers is like, 10 gig downspeed or whatever. Yeah, but the upspeed, I think mine maxes at like 30 or 40 megabits a second or something like that. So it may just not be stout enough to stream 4K. And I'm fine with that. Whatever. I'll do 1080. So that's what I'm shooting on today. Wanted to maybe talk about the A6700, the Sony A6700, which is newly released. And so I've been consuming a little bit of content about it. A buddy of mine tested the overheating in video, and lo and behold, it overheats in video, which I don't think anybody's surprised about. It appears to be the same sensor as the Sony FX30, but it's in a much smaller body and without the active cooling. So it's not a video camera. And really that brings me to using mirrorless cameras as video cameras. And so a lot of people, myself included, do a lot of this. Now, in my course of work shooting real estate, that's fine. You can get away with that because if you're shooting 4K 60, you're doing short clips, short takes of individual shots, individual rooms, and then you're moving on to the next. So you're not doing any long form stuff. But I think where we get into trouble here is these manufacturers who are, there seems to be a frame rate and resolution arms race with the cameras of late, and they're shoehorning more and more powerful sensors and processors into more and more compact camera bodies, and that's just not making them reliable. And so really what you need to be reliable for long form video is a fan. And anybody who tells you any different just hasn't done long form enough video with a camera without a fan in it, because pretty much all of them, except for ones with really large bodies. I haven't tested my R3 yet, which doesn't have a fan doing long form 4K in it, or long form 6K because it shoots 6K raw. But it's a pretty big body. You know, it's a pretty big body, and it might have the thermal architecture to be able to accommodate that. When I had the Sony a7S III, it was pretty good too. I never got it to overheat. I know that some people can get it to overheat. I think Simon, the Ordinary Filmmaker, got it to overheat when he was on some tropical island somewhere. You know, and I've heard about other things too. But I mean, it's got really good thermal architecture, that camera does. But really for long form, you want a fan. So I've got the Komodo-X has a fan. I've got a pair of C200s, they have fans. And I have an R5C and it has a fan. And those are the cameras that I would shoot video on for long form video. So let's see, I've got 3 of you watching right now. Is my audio okay? Someone chime in and tell me if my audio is okay. I'm still testing and setting up the Komodo-X. Now, for those of you who have never seen how awesome the control app for, unplug it here. The control app for the Red ecosystem is, I mean, look at this, right? I can see everything. I can see my image. I can see, I got peeking on there, all the different tools. If I want to go and, how do I do this? If I want to go and like pull focus or pull iris, I can do that. I can have pre-programmed focus pulls. And I mean, you can pretty much, that latency, is really good. You know, you can totally use this. This is the wireless app for iOS, and they do it for Android too. And it's so good that when I use the Red cameras, and if I'm shooting like interiors and such with the Red cameras, I don't even use external monitors anymore. And it was like that with the OG Komodo too. This app is so good. And there had been some who had some latency problems with the OG Komodo, and they didn't think that it was going to be, you know, fast enough to pull focus. But, you know, if you take a look at my hand moving compared to that on the screen, you can see that it's got a little bit of latency, but to me, for the kind of work I do, that is totally usable. And to have such a powerful interface, I mean, pretty much all the menu items are right there within that application. So all camera manufacturers need to take note of what Red has done here with the Komodo Control app, because it's absolutely brilliant. And anybody who I've ever known that's had a Komodo or a Komodo-X sings praises about this app. This is one of their favorite parts of the camera. It's one of my favorite parts of the camera. It was one of my favorite parts about the OG Komodo too. Okay, let's see. Rob Phoenix 142 sounds good. Thank you. So I'm still trying to figure out the preamps on the Komodo. So the preamps on the Komodo-X are pretty good. They're a lot better than the OG Komodo or any Red camera. I had a DSMC 2 Dragon X a while back, and its preamps were junk too. I mean, Red cameras really until this one, and I don't know about the Raptor because I don't have any experience with that one. The preamps were really just for scratch, for syncing in post, and it was kind of expected that you were going to be tracking audio separately, but I'm still trying to figure out these preamps. So it shows on the screen here. How do I get this off of there? So it shows my peaking there is getting way up into the orange and like maybe even the red, but I have a limiter on it. I have a limiter at -6, but it certainly is getting over -6, and so I think it's a soft limiter that's happening on it. But it sounds pretty good. Like, I mean, I would totally track audio to this just use it. You know, and that's the first RED camera that I can say that about. The C200s have really good preamps too. So I would totally do that with one of those as well. So, but regarding the app, okay, that's another thing that I wanted to get into today. Camera apps. And so Canon is going to be releasing pretty soon, everybody thinks, the R5 Mark II and the R1. So they've kind of been teasing us about both. And I'm somebody who I've had the R5, the OG R5. I currently have an R5C, and I have also an R3. And the R3 has always been a strange camera. The body of it, the ergonomics of it, are so much better than the R5, even down to the way that, okay, setting aside that the R3 is a full-size body, and it's not, you know, the short body that you then have to put a battery grip on to get that same type of form factor. Just the finger groove, like the finger choil in it. So you put this on the shutter and this, let me see, I can grab it right here. Let me just show you instead of telling you. Okay. So this groove right here, and it's going to be hard to see kind of on the angle. So this is so much deeper and better than the one in the R5. And that just, it gives this finger somewhere to go on the R3. And it feels really, really good in the hand. So I never thought the R5 really felt any better in the hand than, I thought the A1 with the grip actually felt better than the R5, but the R3 I think feels better than both, and I think that's why. It gives this finger somewhere to go and gives you a really solid grip. Also, I like that it has the integrated battery grip instead of it being like one that screws on there, like with the smaller cameras. It's just better, you know, and I still don't know why, and this kind of dovetails into the whole like overheating thing too. Why cameras have to be so small these days? You know, why don't we make them like, cameras all used to be about this size, man. Maybe not that big, but I remember when I was first starting out and I went to Costco and got the Nikon D7200, which I still think is a fantastic camera, Nikon crop body DSLR. And, you know, all cameras in those days, they were pretty good feeling in the hand. They were pretty good feeling in the hand. They didn't overheat, even the ones that shot video. Like the Nikon that I'm talking about shot video, the Canon, you know, the 5D3, 5D4, those shot video, Nikon D850, that shot video. But they were big chunky cameras and they felt good in your hand. And nowadays they keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's like you have nothing to grab onto. You know, your pinky has nothing to grab onto. So getting back to what the R5 II and what the R1 is going to be. The R5 Mark II, for some reason they think it's best to keep that form factor with the R5 Mark II, the short form factor. I think that's probably going to be the case, and that's fine. There are rumors of it being 60 megapixel resolution. I would have to think really hard. I'd probably get one still. You know, and you know, I wouldn't get, well, let me qualify that though. I probably wouldn't get one if I didn't already have an R3, because the R3 gives me, it's really a great daily driver. And I was kind of discounting it before I got one, because it is only 24 megapixel. And I didn't think that was going to be enough resolution, but I found that the Canon RF glass is so sharp and so punchy and renders color in such a saturated way that it renders higher resolution looking images than 24 megapixel. And there's actually quite a bit of cropping room there. So when I'm out shooting real estate, one of the reasons I like shooting high resolution, even for real estate, and people say, oh, well, you know, the MLS mangles it down to 3, you know, megabytes or whatever it is, you know, and that's true. It does, but you can still see it. One of the reasons that I like high resolution is a very specific shot. Now, it happens to be also a very important shot. So one of the most important, if not the most important shot that you're going to take when you're shooting real estate is the front elevation shot of the home. The single point dead on, or you can, you know, from an angle, you know, 2-point on either side of it. But that's a very important shot. Now, I stopped growing at 5'8", right? Which means if I have a camera up to my eye, and especially if it is a 2-story home, my framing is going to be somewhat out of balance, right? There's going to be a whole lot of street in the foreground, and I'm going to like barely make it to the roof of the house if I'm standing fairly close to it. And it's going to be off kilter, right? So what I typically will do is I will back up, right? So I'll get more just in the frame. And then in post, I will crop up the bottom corners so I can give myself equal amounts of ground and sky with the subject property right about in the middle of the frame. And it's a better looking frame. Now, you can do that with a tilt shift. And I have the Canon 24mm tilt shift. I rarely use it. I'll do that with the tilt shift when I'm shooting twilights. And the reason is because I still, you know, I have a lot more time to frame up my shot and everything when I'm shooting twilights than when it's just run and gunning, you know, on the daily. So I'll do that when I'm shooting twilights, but when I'm shooting on the daily, I am running and gunning. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to back up, get more globally in the frame, and then trim up the corners. Don't fall off, R3. And then trim up the corners in post. Now, if you're starting only with a 24 megapixel camera, that may not work out too well for you, you know? So having that extra resolution, and you can see the difference between the R5 variant cameras and say like the R3, totally. I mean, you can see it. you can see it even on the internet. You know, the R5 just looks better, like it does. You know, it's got more resolution. You know, so why is the R3 my daily driver? Because it's so much better of a camera. Like it is. The eyeball thing doesn't really work all that great. So, I mean, I know that some people say like, oh, it does. So for those of you who don't know, so the R3 kind of like its party trick is the EVF tracks your eyeball. And so, you know, and thankfully you could turn it off, which I have. But, you know, you got to set it up and calibrate it and everything. But, you know, wherever your eyeball looks is where the focus box is going to go. And then if you do like a half press shutter or whatever, it'll start if you're on tracking, it'll start tracking whatever. And, you know, when you watch like the Canon like literature and the, you know, and the YouTube stuff, and, you know, people are like tracking like motorcycles with it and stuff. And it's like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. It doesn't really work that great. So it's kind of more of a gimmick than anything. Like, it'll kind of get like in the region that you want to go. So, but like for me, I only tried it out a couple times, and that's enough for me to know that it's just not going to work for me because it's not like super accurate. And sometimes, so the reason why I'd want it to be super accurate, like on this camera, is because the exposure with that camera, and this is like this with the R5 too, more so than the Sony cameras, this is something that's different with the Canon cameras in use, is the metering, even in an evaluative metering, right, which is going to be allegedly what it says it is. It's evaluative, but it still does weight a little bit more heavily in that evaluation what the focus point is. And so if you have a very dynamic scene and you have deep shadows and you also have bright light coming across, if your focusing box is on the shadow, then your exposure is going to go up and you might blow your highlights. If you're, yes, that's the right way. Or if your focusing box is on the highlights, your exposure is going to go down. And that's usually the better place to be with a Canon camera because they're so good at recovering shadows, right? Is you want to be underexposing it on those single frames versus overexposing it. Because once those highlights are gone, they're gone. So my point is, with the eyeball tracking in the R3, it's not precise enough when shooting a scene like that you can trust it to, okay, I want it to land on that post right there because it's in sunlight, not the post right next to it because that one's in shadow, right? I want it to land on the sunlight so that way when my exposure dopes it to one stop under whatever I've defined, it's not going to blow my highlights because I'm giving it something totally dim to focus on and it thinks I need the whole thing brighter. So if that makes any sense, then great. If not, that's cool too. I'm just rambling. This is a Saturday bro down. Let me know if you guys have any questions. It looks like there isn't many of you with me. So if this isn't a productive meeting, then I'll probably call it short before too long. But is there anything that y'all had any questions about? I do have experience with a lot of cameras these days, you know, and I have a lot of friends with a lot of experience with them too. In fact, the R3 was a trade deal with a friend of mine. I had two R5Cs, an R5C and a lens went his way and R3 went my way. So I have experience with a lot of them. So the R1, let's talk about, before I leave here, we'll talk about the R1. It is going to be less resolution than the R5. I am almost 100% certain about that. And that's just based on the history of what Canon does with 1 series cameras versus 5 series cameras. So, you know, the 5 series cameras traditionally have been the very high resolution commercial photography type of workhorse cameras, whereas the 1 series cameras have typically been, you know, sports and other types of action and things like that, but they've been lower resolution. And so, oh, there's Josh. Yeah, I was just talking about you. So this used to be Josh's R3. Now that you have the KX, what else are you looking to get? Nothing, man. You know, in fact, I've been looking on. So when you, so now that I have the KX, like when you get it, it's naked, right? And so now you start looking at all like the red stuff, and that's, you know, that's some good news, right? I mean, because everything red is just costs 4 times more than anything else that's comparable. So, but I'm looking at what is that company? So there's a company, and I forget the mid 41, I think it's called. It's the guy who used to head up Wooden Camera, that now is making accessories, like high-end accessories for all types of cinema cameras, and he's got some pretty cool KX stuff. Like he's got like a breakout side plate, so like it's a side plate that mounts to the side of the brain, but then it has modular breakout like for XLR and for time code and all that, and it's really slick looking. And so, you know, I'm taking a look at that. I'm looking to get rid of more stuff than anything. So I'm like you, Josh, you know, and I know that you're looking to sell some stuff. I'm looking to sell a lot of stuff, and it's mostly like grip stuff and like lighting and just minutia, you know, minutia that most of it isn't really worth a whole lot, which is why I still have a lot of it. You know, I've got a shed like full of grip gear and stuff because it's, I mean, can you get a lot of money for it? I don't think so. You know, I don't know, man. And so I know getting rid of gear is the best, but, well, I mean, after you get rid of it, it's the best, but it's the worst when you're trying to get rid of it because you got to do like the whole Craigslist dude thing. And, you know, because this stuff too, Josh, like you don't want to ship you don't want to ship like C-stands and, you know, and stuff like that. It's not worth it. I don't understand how people that sell those things ship them, because they're only like, what, $100, $150 and free shipping, and they weigh like 100 pounds. So yeah, man, I don't know, but I'm looking to sell. I guess there are some things that I'm looking to sell that are worth selling and shipping. Like, I'm thinking about selling my Aputure Nova, because I don't ever really use it. Well, I take that back. I do use it, but I use it like in here, you know, and I'm not using it right now. So I've got just some other COB light with a strip softbox on it that I'm using right there, and then I'm using kind of like a lantern type of modifier right there as my fill. So, yeah, Josh. So if you want to make a deal, you know, with an Aputure Nova, it's all the RGB light you'll ever need, dude. So anyway, I'm going to call it. My live stream last week was very boisterous. This one is not. So thanks for hanging out. Hey, Josh, how does the KX look? So I might as well just be talking just to you now, because I think I'm talking just to you and maybe Robin there. So the KX is right now at 4,900 Kelvin. You know what? Let me get my Sekonic and I'll measure these lights, and I'll show you, because we've been talking about this. Let's see. Because you and I have been talking about this before, about how pretty much all cameras that I've ever seen don't interpret white balance totally correctly. Now, this is like a $1,500 color meter, so this will give you correct readings of light. So right now, the KX is at right now it's at 5,000 Kelvin minus 210, and I forgot which way that goes with red, whether that's green or magenta. So let's first, I'm going to do a reading on this light. That is at 5898. I will do a reading on that light. Oops. That is at 5551. And both of these, by the way, are just daylight balanced lights. And so, I mean, I could use like color correction gels if I want, but I'm not that particular about this particular shot. So 58 on that, 55 on this. Let me turn around here and take a reading right on my nose. That is 5308. So if I modify the KX here, and this app is awesome, to 5300 Kelvin, which is what it is right now, I just did it. That, to me, just in the monitor that I'm looking in right now, looks too warm. It looks too warm and orange. So let's see. Oh, and 0.2 green. And 0.2 green. Let me see what green is. I'm gonna do obnoxious tint here just to see what way this goes. That's green. So we'll go -2, because I think that's reading backwards. Is that the target? I think that's the target. So -2. So this, according to this, with my nose right there, oops, other way around, with my nose right there, should be white. And it looks pretty warm to me. Let me take another reading. One more. Just for good measure. Yeah, this should be white. I don't think it is. I think that's too warm. So I think I like it better right about there. So anyway, I'm gonna call it. But this is the tool that I was using, which is I mean, it's a great tool. You know, it does all kinds of nerdy things that I don't know how to use. I know how to use some of it, you know, and it is great, especially when you're trying to match lights. So if you have RGB lights or you have daylight balance lights that have tint adjustments with green magenta, this is great because you can dial them right in with the tint to each other in mixed lighting. So anyway, I will see you guys. And let's see, probably next Saturday, but maybe I'll plug it a little bit harder next time so somebody will show up. Peace.